Hello. Um, I'd like to tell a little story before I start this. I don't know if anybody will see this or if anybody will think it's funny or get it or whatever, but uh, I just like to tell a little story. Uh, Whenever I was in uh, middle school, I used to, the English teacher would make us all write stories. And then the English teacher would get up and he would read our stories. And so, anyway, I wrote this story one time with a fairly obscure ending. And whenever the teacher got through reading it, there was only one guy in the whole class that got it. We had like a class of like 20 or 30 people in our English class. There was only one guy that got it. And he that got the joke, of what the joke I put in the story. At the end, the ending joke. I put the joke and the ending together. And everybody else in the room was dead silent. And this one guy, the one guy that got it, was laughing his you-know-what off. And he loved it. So I kind of learned then that, to me, I would rather... I enjoyed it more that making a joke so that the one guy got it rather than the whole class got it, because it was more enjoyable that the one guy got it, the one little joke I put in there, that the one guy got it and everybody else didn't get it. So if what I'm getting ready to say, people don't like it, people don't get it, then I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for the one person who does get it. And so, if the vast majority of people just write it off and are like, "What is this guy talking about?" then that's great. Because I'm looking for that one person out there that's going to get the joke, and they're going to be like, "Oh, I see what he's saying." Another thing about this is I can tell the age, what we're doing, and where we're at. And so, what was I going to say? So anyway, I know that it's like when a new message is coming, when a new understanding is coming, it's time for a new understanding to come along. And even in this case, it doesn't go to say that some of the other things out here are not still cool in a way, but whenever a new understanding is coming along, and whenever you're on the cusp of that, then you could say it's nice when you have people to understand what you're talking about and to fellowship with and to agree with about what it is. But really, for me, I think kind of the best time of it, the best time of understanding coming along is whenever you're right at the very beginning of it and nobody does get it. That's kind of more enjoyable, because I don't know how to, it's like you don't really have too many people that get what you're saying, but they're on the same hand, you're on the cusp of something great. And I feel like the cat that swallowed the canary, like Sylvester and Tweety Bird, or something like that. The cat's got the canary in his mouth and he's just kind of walking around like, and he knows he's got something good. So that's kind of the way I feel. I've been walking around for a long time now with this canary in my mouth, and I feel like the cat that swallowed the canary. And sometimes the canary starts to sing a little bit. So that's what it's going to be today, is a sermon, coincidentally, about singing. So, anyhow, I'll try to get right into it. What I would like to talk about today, I would like to name it, I don't know, either rock and roll or spiritual rock and roll or spiritual nirvana or something to that effect. And I would like to go into a little bit of rock and roll history, because really the message, well, I don't know if you'd even call it the message now, but you all know what I'm talking about. Spiritual understanding. I mean, come on, you all know what I'm talking about. Is really has been rock and roll. Rock and roll has went right along with it. Rock and roll got started back in the 40s and 50s with the blues rock, and then Elvis and et cetera, et cetera. And that was essentially what, of course, I know, the Message, man, they would have a fit over this, but we won't. We know that rock and roll kind of correlated, went right along in parallel with the Message, because, the old country singers couldn't do it. They had to, they couldn't handle Elvis, so, Elvis broke off and essentially made rock and roll. And it all happened at about the time William Branham was preaching his message. So rock and roll runs right in parallel with the Message. And so anyway, so I wanted to talk about some parallels today that I have found in a little rock history that runs along with where we're up to towards today. And I might even be a little behind on it, but you can't, I guess it's just the way it works is you can't unveil something until it's already happened. So anyway, I'm going to unveil something that's already happened, really, I guess you might say. And I'll try to make this as unboring as possible. But, so, you all get what I'm saying, rock and roll goes with the Message, okay. So that, it also stands to reason that there could be some parallels between rock and roll people and people in the Message, or the spiritual understanding, the spiritual people. And so today, I believe that I have found one. And I don't believe I found one, I know I found one. And I'd like to talk about it. I'd like to talk about a couple people and who they are in the Message, and their stories and how that correlates with what's going on. I do not personally believe, to me, the Message has gotten to the point of that it's all about forwards and backwards and this and that. And really, I think alternatively to that. I don't think in those wavelengths. It's like the Message is basically now is like, move forward and don't have anything to do with the past. And that's just not the way, that's not the wavelength I'm thinking on. I think in an alternative wavelength to that. But there on the same hand, I also recognize that, there has been a commission here. I personally believe that there's been a commission here to get everybody to change. And I don't discount that. And I would like to tell the story of how that, and then move on from there as to where I believe we're at now. But I'd like to tell the story of, a little bit of a story of that, and how that happened in rock and roll, that commission, the commission to change that we got into the third coming and up into today. And who through that come through, who that come through. I would like to talk about the parallel that I have found in rock and roll, that parallels that perfectly. And like I said, Elvis could have been like William Branham, and oh man, the Message, wouldn't they freak out on that one? Might as well have a little fun here, folks. I can just imagine what they would say to that. You can't compare William Branham to Elvis. This is rock and roll. You can't do. I guess they're the Beatles or something. Oh my goodness, could you imagine? Anyway, but let's move on up. Let's move on up a little bit. So we go from William Branham's era, and we get up into an era, and I'm going to have to read some stuff, but I'll try not to make it too boring. I'm going to read anyway. I read a little rock history, but so we move it up. We're up past the Beatles and Elvis and everything, and so we get up into like the 70s and the 80s, and you get up into like the glam rock and the hair metal and all that. And so anyway, that was kind of where it had gotten to. And because the rebellious, it's odd that really our spiritual walk all the way through has been rebellion. William Branham rebelled against the traditional ideas of the church. So it was rebellious rock and roll. And that's what it's been all the way through. It's been rebellion against that. Now, it might have been, I don't know, it's a very hard thing to explain. But anyway, it's like, oddly enough, see, there's an issue of rebellion, but an issue of, I'll get into that here in a minute. Anyway, I'm going to tell how it all plays in because I'll get to it. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about here is the change, the real change, was in rock and roll terms. Whenever everything that the guy who really changed things and took it off of glam rock and hair metal and more the traditional rock at the time happened in the late 80s. And that band, I'm going to have to erase some of this so I can write and explain some of these things. But that band was Guns N' Roses. If you know rock history, that band was like undisputedly Guns N' Roses. Okay, they changed from, they weren't doing hair metal anymore. Everybody was like big hair and, but these guys come out and changed things. And they had a front man, the singer was named Axl Rose. Okay, so really like one of my, if I'm just talking regular rock and roll, like one of my favorite bands is Guns N' Roses of all time, no doubt about it. So anyway, but Axl Rose was the front man singer. Okay, so I would like to talk a little about Guns N' Roses and Axl Rose and tell the story. See, everybody was doing the big hair, then Axl Rose came out and he was like anti the big hair. He was like the guy that changed the whole thing. Everybody thought about things differently after this guy come out. Okay, he didn't do big hair. He had like a do-rag and a different hairstyle, and everything was different. And the whole band was just different. Okay, it was a total change. So, like I said, rock and roll, what happened in rock and roll correlates to the spiritual. So maybe you all are starting to get where I'm going with this already. So I want to talk about Guns N' Roses and Axl Rose. Okay. All right, let's talk about Axl Rose here just a minute. I'll get to that. Okay. Let's do a little history on Axl Rose. I knew this. I knew rock history good enough to be able to put together the typology on this. And then when I got to looking into it, I got to really digging into it, I was like, oh my goodness. Because I knew I had found something here that was right on the button. And I'm going to mention names without mentioning names. Let's just say that I remember in my time with Tori Aloyanza, he mentioned to me something about something to do with him being born in Lafayette, Indiana, and something to do with McDonald's. The McDonald's, everybody knows McDonald's. Let's explain that. But anyway, how that, as I recall, something to do with it starting or having some origin in Lafayette, Indiana, and the hamburgers that were served around the world. It changed the food industry. It changed. We went to fast food, and everything totally changed. And you can't. You get a hamburger. It's like it's McDonald's or McDonald's started the idea of it basically, and it started the change. And McDonald's. Okay, I'm not. That was what he was getting at. So you all know who I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm just telling the story. So I want to get us up to date on where we're at in this rock thing. But what I said that to say this, that there are correlations between things. There are correlations between places, people, things, change, whatever's going on in the world. There are obviously correlations. So I would like to talk about some correlations that I've found. And like I said, I want to talk about this guy that come in and changed the music industry. Okay, he changed rock and roll. Okay, Elvis created rock and roll essentially, or made it big. I would say he created it. I mean, you had like, what was Chuck Berry and all those guys. You had guys, I guess, before Elvis, and they were really kind of like the guys that really changed things. But Elvis was the dude. He was the dude that changed things. Elvis and the Beatles, and So anyway, I mean, it was like William Branham. He was the dude that there were thinkers back then, but he was the dude. Okay, so Axl Rose in the mid '80s or the late '80s, he was the dude that changed things. So if you ask me, then that sets up already for who do we know as the white horse rider from the West that come and change the message, the next person that come and change the message. Okay, so that isn't too hard to figure, and regardless of whether you agree with the guy, you have to say that to me anyway, you have to say that's the focal point of where the change is, or where the change has been historically in modern message, the modern message. So I would like to talk about this guy, this Axl Rose, this guy I'm talking about that changed things in rock and roll, not spiritual rock and roll, but physical rock and roll. Okay, let me read a little bit about this guy here. This is. I don't have a picture of him. I wish I had a picture of him, but sorry about that. But anyway, maybe I'll put some links in the stuff below, and you all can see what I'm talking about. But everybody knows "Sweet Child of Mine." Everybody knows that song. That's like the #1 guitar riff of all time. They voted it like the #1 guitar riff of all time. Everybody knows the song "Sweet Child of Mine." This is the guy that sang "Sweet Child of Mine." Okay, so anyway, Axl Rose. Born February 6th. So the guy's born in Aquarius at the end of the first week of February. Okay. Anybody else know anybody that changed spiritual rock and roll that was born at the end of the first week of February? I'm just saying. So he's born here. Now, he grew up home in, and I'm not making this up, y'all can look it up. Lafayette, Indiana. Okay? So, like I said, I knew there was something up with these players, and I'm going to talk about more than just Axl Rose, but I knew there was something up with these rock dudes because I love rock history, and I'm like the behind the music guy. I'm like the spiritual behind the music. This is this is like VH3 instead of VH1. This is VH3, VH Third Coming. Okay, because VH1 was the old channel you watched all the behind the music rock documentaries and all that on. I love that stuff. So anyway, so we've got this dude here, and I knew it. I knew before I got into this, I was like, that Axl Rose has got to be he's got to be a Toriello Jones. He's got to be that position, because he changed it. And I got to looking at it, and I was like, okay, All right, I started reading it. I'm like, oh, so he's an Aquarian. He's born at the end of the first week of February. He's born in Lafayette, Indiana. And let's see, what else can I? Let me read some of the rest of this. I was just like, you got to be kidding me, man! This is just it's too much to just it's too much to just disregard. I mean, if anybody's going to try to disregard this one, I don't know what to say. Okay, so anyway, okay. Born, and I'll try not to make this too boring, but born and raised, Axl Rose, born and raised Lafayette, Indiana. Rose moved in the early 80s to Los Angeles, where he became active in the local hard rock scene and joined several bands, including Hollywood Rose, LA Guns, and co-founded Guns N' Roses in 1985, of whom he had great success and recognition in the late 80s and early 90s. The first album, Appetite for Destruction, in 1987, has sold in excess of 30 million copies worldwide and is the best-selling debut album of all time in the United States, with 18 million copies sold. Okay. And then it was followed up by Use Your Illusion and Use Your Illusion 2, 1991. Okay, which debuted at number 1 and number 2. Okay, so like I said, this was what changed things. Okay, after 1994, okay, I'll get on. Anyway, let me read about his early life. So, okay, we've got to do born here, home here, born here, change, moving on now. Y'all got what I'm saying. Now listen to this. Listen to this. Tell me if this sounds like any era of people or any people, as individuals, however you want to say it. Axl Rose was born. I'm not going to read it exactly, but Lafayette, Indiana. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so let's see. He has 2 younger siblings. Blah blah blah, etc. etc. Okay, so he never met his biological father. Was murdered in his biological father was murdered in Marion, Illinois, 1984. Okay, Rose didn't know about the murder until years later. Okay, all right. See, his name, they changed his name to Bailey because his real dad left like 2 years into his life, so or something like that, and his mother changed his name to Bailey, but his real name was Rose. But anyway, so his stepdad was, as far as I take it, Bailey. Okay, the Bailey household, which was Axl Rose's household, was very religious. Okay, Rose and his family attended a Pentecostal church where he was required to attend services 3 to 8 times per week and even taught Sunday school. If you know Axl Rose, it's just rather interesting that he would have ever been involved in the Pentecostal church growing up, because this dude was like, Guns N' Roses was like the guys that wreaked havoc in L.A. These were guys that were... you just wouldn't picture him in a Pentecostal church growing up. But anyway, okay. And even taught Sunday school. Okay. Rose later recalled an impressive upbringing, stating, and I quote, "We'd have televisions one week, then my stepdad would throw them out because they were satanic. I wasn't allowed to listen to music. Women were evil. Everything was evil." Okay, so anyway, and then he went on, that was his early days. So, Pentecostal church, I might have been spelling that wrong, but Pentecostal, whatever. Pentecostal church. Okay, let's see, what was it here? Let's go down the list here. Let's make it fun. Oh yeah, taught Sunday school. So he was essentially a preacher. Let's see, no television. Evil. Let's see. Women are evil. What else was evil? No, television was satanic. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Women were evil. Let's see, women are evil. And what else here? Everything's evil. Everything is evil. All right. So, now, I said all this, folks. I said all that to make my case. All right. Do I need to run down it again? The dude's born the first week, end of the first week of February. He's an Aquarian. All right. He's born in Lafayette, Indiana. We know anybody else born in Lafayette, Indiana? In his early days, he went to Pentecostal church and taught Sunday school. And his family would throw out television because they thought it was satanic. What other people did that? I don't know. Branhamites, maybe? Okay. Then, women were evil. That's straight down the line Branhamite thinking that women are evil. And, everything's evil, basically. I mean, that's the message. That's the message right there in a nutshell. Everything's evil. Okay. So anyway, this dude lived through all that. Okay. So I don't think I have to try very hard to get the point across that I'm trying to make here, that this is a Toriello Yonza. I don't move on here. I ain't got all day. We got to go get groceries here, so I ain't got all day to try to make this case. All right. Just have a little fun here with this, what y'all say. Now, like I said, and then I got to tell the rest of the story. And like I say, I would rather nobody gets it, and the one guy. I'm just looking for that one guy. I'm not looking for I don't want everybody to get this. That wouldn't be any fun to me if everybody was like, oh yeah. No, I just want the one guy. I'm just looking for one person out here that's going to get what I'm getting ready to tell. Okay. Now everybody can go with me that far. I don't think anybody would have any trouble going with me that far. Okay. So, this might, up to this point, I suppose, even the Love Diviner people can, have a good time with me. So that's good. I'm glad we could have a good time this far. Now this is where it goes. This is where we part ways. This is where anyway, this is where the trains deconverge. So the train cars deconverge. So anyway, what happened was the next thing that happened in rock history. Like I said, Axl Rose changed everything. Okay, this was early '90s. So what I have been a firm believer in for a long time, to try to get this explained, I have been a firm believer in the concept since I've been preaching. I've been a firm believer in the concept that if you could figure out, and I know this to be true. I don't really need to explain. I'm not explaining it for me, but I know what's going on here because I can feel it. I know I can feel what's going on, but I'm going to try to explain how it works. If you can definitively place something, because that's what we do. We have been doing this typology stuff for a long time, and we can, people do it all the time. They definitively place something and say, well, that's got to relate to whoever the person is or whatever, and so anyway, if you can do that, then what I have learned to do with it is take it and show what the rest of the things that are going on with it. Because it's like if you've got a timeline, and this is like whatever year, and you can look back on it and you can say, well, this happened here, this happened here, this happened here, this happened here. So if you know that you're here, if you know where this is at, then you can figure out what the next three things are going to be. Because so it's like this: if I know that Axl Rose is a Toriello Yonza, and that that change, the whole change thing, come out, then I could begin to place other rock and rollers around it and figure out what everybody's doing out here. Okay, figure out what everybody's ideas are, because this is like my North Star. You know, if I can figure this out, then I can start to plot the rest of the skyboard. So anyhow, what happened next was this. See, Axl Rose changed everything from old to new. Okay, that's what essentially their message was. Essentially, Guns N' Roses, that's what their message was change all the old stuff, change all the glam rock, change all the hair metal, change all that, and just do something different. Okay, that's what their, dare I say, rock and roll commission was. Okay, so with the spiritual rock and roll commission here, that was given to our spiritual Axl Rose, is to do the same thing. So the next thing that came along after that was this. The next big thing, arguably, there were several, but the next thing that came along was Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. And I know most people are going to know the band Nirvana. Okay, you know, everybody knows Sweet Child of Mine, the song Sweet Child of Mine, Axl Rose, Guns N' Roses. And then, you know, everybody pretty much knows Nirvana. You know, those are two household names of bands, of rock and roll bands. You know, I imagine even the most of, for a little joke, I imagine even the most of, you know, perhaps hardened message people that haven't had TV for the past 40 years, they might have even heard of Guns N' Roses and Nirvana. So this is not stuff that's obscured. And anyway, if you get into the rock history of it, the next thing that came along, and it turned into be the most like famous rock feud of all time, was Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. And what it is see, Axl Rose, he was you know, heavy metal, hard rock, rock and roll, and changed everything from what it was. And then the next thing that came along was Nirvana, basically. And Nirvana was not classified as hard rock or like you know, like heavy metal, rock and roll. They were that, obviously, kind of, but I mean they're rock and rollers, obviously, but they were classified as okay. They were classified. Nirvana was classified as alternative rock or grunge rock, but really grunge rock falls under, it's just a category of alternative rock. Okay, alternative rock was something that was new and had not even been on the charts. They didn't put alternative rock on the charts until the year, as far as I understand from what I read, 1988. Alternative rock was not even charted until 1988, was, I guess, like the rest of it. So anyway, what we have here is, and there was a great feud between Kurt Cobain and Axl Rose. See, Axl Rose actually liked Nirvana and wanted them to play at his birthday party, and Kurt Cobain wouldn't do it. Nirvana basically abhorred Guns N' Roses because they didn't like Guns N' Roses because Guns N' Roses was a corporate, kind of like a corporate rock and roll band. You know, they just didn't like it, and then so it turned out to be a big feud between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain and all of Nirvana and Guns N' Roses. It was a famous feud. You can look it up. I might add a link or something here so that you all can know the history of it for those of you who don't. So, but anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that if we can plot Axl Rose here, then, and we can plot this change here, this commission of change in both rock and roll and in the spiritual here, then we can figure out by knowing the history what should come next. And I'm not saying that I'm looking for something to come. I'm saying it's already here. I'm saying it's later than you think. I'm saying that what we have here is we have Nirvana is already here. And what it is alternative rock. And what alternative rock is what I'm saying here. Alternative rock is spiritual alternative rock, is this alternative way of thinking about things. Because Nirvana, if you listen to Nirvana's music, it was not in the traditional sense of rock and roll. That's why they call it alternative rock. Okay. And if you listen to the lyrics of Nirvana, it's this weird, like, I don't know, you just have to, it's like, it don't go by the mainstream, let's say. So, Guns N' Roses was mainstream, essentially. But they had changed things, but they were still mainstream and still corporate. And that's why Nirvana didn't like them. And so, anyway, that's the way that I feel about the message right now, is that it's like Nirvana, or Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose, has changed things and changed the way rock and roll was done. And and then alternative rock, kind of like the next thing that happened, was while this was going on, was like Guns N' Roses and Axl Rose, they changed things from the old to the new. Okay, that's what you got. That's the message. That's the love diviner type of message out here. And then alternative rock is that's not what it's doing. It's not. It's alternative to that wavelength. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to. That's what I believe is alternative rock. I believe alternative spiritual rock. It's not. It's an alternative to this old and new that we've been hearing for the past 15, 20 years. Okay, and as far as that goes, I believe personally that this old and new Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose style message out here is essentially corporate, because what's going on is that, like, the roundtable discussions, I view that as just corporate, like Kurt Cobain and Nirvana was looking at Guns N' Roses, the way they were doing things. That's the way I view their. That's the way I view the Love Divine take of way of doing things. It's still corporate. I mean, this is the feud. We are the feud. The feud is, the feud is here. The feud is, there was a feud here in 1992 or whenever, and there's a feud here in the message. So, and there's a feud here in this spiritual understanding between essentially alternative rock and roll, and the changing but corporate rock and roll. Okay, so, but to me, the roundtable discussions, that is just still corporate rock and roll. That's the thing. That's the equivalent of what Kurt Cobain and Nirvana found so abhorrent of Guns N' Roses. Okay, that's the way I feel about it. And I believe that there's an alternative idea out here to that, and the whole forwards and backwards way of looking at things. I believe there is an alternative way of looking at things out here. There is an alternative rock that exists right here, right now, amongst all this other stuff. And I'll even say this: there are other people out here that. There's a lot of other singers, obviously, than Guns N' Roses and Nirvana. I mean, the feud, we've got a famous feud here, okay? But you've got people like, I don't know, Tom Petty, or a lot of the other rock and rollers that were around back then, Van Halen. I don't know where all that would fall in exactly. But you got other people out here that are not just like this Axl Rose take on it, or, my kind of like Nirvana alternative thought process take on it. You got other people out here that are just, maybe don't fall in anywhere, like, I don't know, like Billy Joel or something, where does that fall in? There's some guy out here that's probably like a Billy Joel, I mean, or whoever it might be. I mean, I kind of think about like, to broaden this out a little bit, I kind of think about like and somebody maybe could fill in the gaps, but I kind of think about who are these people? Who are these people that have different ideas out here? Where do they play in exactly? And because there's some people out here that are, I know one. I know personally one who, I won't mention his name, but a very good friend of mine who has an idea on things that don't really fit exactly anywhere. I mean, they just and they're absolutely third coming, but they have ideas that are just don't really. They're just, I don't know how to explain it. And so anyway, who are they? There's all kinds of people out here. It's not just, there's all kinds of people out here that everybody that's third coming and whatever and beyond, these are all rock and rollers. I know that they might find that funny, but if you're even third coming, you are rebellious to the traditional system of even older rock and roll. You're like heavy metal if you're third coming, because the Branham and the Message were like, we all get our roots from that, but they're like even the third coming guys are like heavy metal. The idea that Jesus has already came. He came on Sunset Mountain. We're not looking for him anymore. That is, that's heavy metal. That is heavy metal in the Message, essentially. That's some hard rock and roll. If you can listen to that, that's some hard rock and roll. Okay, so even those guys are heavy metal. So they're like I don't know, like Motorhead or something, or Ozzy Osbourne, or I don't know who the heck they are. I'm just doing my best here, but it's all rock and roll, and but you've got different takes on it. And so anyway, I just wanted to show that for me, what I want to put out is, I want to put out that I said all that to say this, really, for me, because I guess I'm promoting my own band here. I'm promoting my own ideology. You can't help but do that to some degree, but you can keep the corporate out of it and the way that you do things. And it's like, I feel like I'm like the alternative rock, that I'm presenting an alternative idea to the more mainstream idea of and if anybody wanted the details, it's kind of hard to do, but it's always been hard to give the details. Every message that ever come along, it's hard to give the details. You got to feel it. It's like music. You got to feel it. So it's more about feeling it rather than it is giving you the details of it. And you got to feel me. You got to feel what I'm saying. That. But what I'd like to say is that I want to promote my own band to some degree. I want to promote this spiritual nirvana that I have found, which is alternative to the more mainstream ideas out here, like the love divine idea. That's mainstream corporate rock. Okay, is what that is in terms of the message out here. In terms of the way that we all put together, that is mainstream corporate rock. The round table system that they have is corporate mainstream, orchestra rock, and I don't like it. And I mean, we're all rock and rollers, but I don't like it. So anyway, that's what I just wanted to say, that maybe listen to my band. Maybe, because I feel like compared to that, I feel like a garage band. I feel like it's not a big stage. It's just some guys come over, brought their instruments, and we're all jamming out in the garage. And that's the way I feel. That's the way it's not It's not a big label. It's just that's the feel of it, and that's what I want to produce out here. And it's like when it comes to this, doing like for example the round table thing and the way that the system is kind of set up. It's definitely rock and roll, obviously. I mean, it's even more rock and roll than heavy metal, is what the Love Divine way is. It changed from, that was a change from kind of like heavy metal into a different brand of things. And but there is still an alternative. There is still alternative rock. And I mean, it's like this. If you like Guns N' Roses, you like all that, then whatever. But but I'm promoting alternative rock here. And there was something else I wanted to get out. When it comes to this, like the round table way of doing things, I'm not promoting that, because I think I do things more on the garage band. It's like, what's the garage band equivalent? It's startup band. It's like there's no system like that to it. It's kind of just free, really, compared to that. And that's the way I feel about it. I'm not doing no round table. You're not going to find me at a round table discussion in the message. Anyway, I don't know if anybody can get, or I won't say people can't get it. I mean, they might disagree with me or whatever, and that's their position to do so, I'm sure. But I'm just looking, like I said when I started this, I'm just looking for the one person out there that will that does get it, that gets the joke, gets what I'm saying, that laughs at the joke. Then when everybody else is like, it didn't do them any good, and that's fine. I don't want any. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for the one person out here that gets it, that sees this alternative, that considers alternative viewpoints to the mainstream that we have here. And this is not in any way, I want to say this is not in any way to demean the commission of the change, because I mean, I was, I appreciate that. It's not, there was certainly a commission here to change from what we had to what, but that's not the end of things. And I don't even want to exactly say that what I'm saying is even beyond, because I just think it's just an alternative too. It's not even necessarily beyond. It kind of is, but it's like, alternative rock was an alternative to the mainstream rock, and I'm just saying, there's different bands out here. Take a listen to different bands. You might like them, and that's, I don't know how to explain it any better than that, really. It's just there's more stuff going on out here that's good stuff to listen to. Whenever I started listening to hard rock and roll, Guns N' Roses really, I mean, both naturally and spiritually, it's funny for me that Guns N' Roses was the band. I remember whenever I was, all I ever listened to was like the Beatles and Elvis and all that stuff and whatever. And I'm on the school bus one day, and one of my friends, we got to talk about rock and roll, and he played guitar and stuff, and he's like, "Hey man," he was mentioning all these bands, and I'm like, "No, I don't know anything about those." And he's like, "I'm going to make you a CD. I'm going to make you a CD of some new stuff, some good stuff." And I'm pretty sure he made me a CD. And what he made me a CD of was Guns N' Roses. It was the first new band that I had gotten into, and it just loved it. And whenever all this come out with this change and all this stuff from what we were doing, that was Guns N' Roses in the message. Loved it. Okay, but then I went on to listen to other things like Nirvana and like all the grunge bands, all the alternative rock, and a lot of like 90s rock, and I love that stuff. So that's all I'm saying is Guns N' Roses, good, but heavy metal, good. Look, Beatles, good. Elvis, good. Heavy metal, good. Guns N' Roses, good. Okay, listen to some alternative rock. I'm just saying, just give it a shot and listen to some alternative rock and see if you don't like it. Listen to some spiritual, spiritual Elvis and Beatles, William Branham, good. Okay, spiritual heavy metal, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, like Third Coming, AC/DC, good. Okay, Love Divine, Toriello Yonza, that cause, that was, I don't know. Okay, that's a whole different message there. I don't want to get into that, but anyway, but what I'm saying is, okay, like AC/DC, Third Coming, good. Okay, Guns N' Roses, Love Divine, good. Okay, listen, are you okay, wifey? Okay. Anyway, Guns N' Roses, listen to that, okay? But give alternative rock a chance. Listen to some alternative rock. Listen to stuff like this. Listen to an alternative viewpoint to things. See if you like it. So, anyhow, I guess that's about it. Rock on.